This is That Word, The Storm, a 120-year timeline. It's a thin book. It's a casual read. We'll casually narrate it here over a portrait view. It'll be in 3-minute segments, and when I complete the book, I'll combine it all into a single video. As we can see here, it says, President McKinley shot by a lunatic. Got the Titanic, Pearl Harbor, JFK assassination, 9/11, Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump 2016. It's by Robert S. Smith. As we open the book, we see the same as the front cover. Copyright 2019 by Robert S. Smith. The Storm. I can't say this word, just so you guys know. The censors censor that. A 120-year timeline, a crash course about the conspiracy to save the world. And we see a picture from a Trump rally with that sign there and a bunch of people holding those signs. Contents. Introduction, glossary of terms, famous names admit to conspiracy, deep state murderers, President McKinley, deep state puppet Woodrow Wilson, 1913, the Fed and income tax, World War I and globalism, communism, the League of Nations scam, President Harding and America First, the engineered crash of 1929, the deep state commie bonus army, deep state puppet Franklin Roosevelt, World War II for globalism, communist penetration of America, the truth about Joseph McCarthy, deep state puppet Dwight Eisenhower. U.S. military versus the deep state murders President Kennedy, deep state murders Senator Kennedy, deep state commie terror in USA, deep state overthrows President Nixon, deep state tries to kill President Reagan, military gives us the internet, 28 years, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, deep state murders John F. Kennedy Jr., 9/11 was an inside job, Putin of Russia defies the deep state climate scam exposed, Obama's war against military patriots, CIA agent Ed Snowden versus NSA patriots, the Paris climate scam, military patriots recruit Trump, CIA Hillary versus NSA Trump, Trump threatens to investigate Hillary, election night 2016, Trump wins, Trump's troops send hidden message, Trump's military inner circle, fake news unleashes hell on Trump, Trump defies the globalist deep state, then came that word on the page there, we can't say it. And as you can see, this book is only 92 pages. And as you look, there's many pictures on every page, so this should not be a long investment of your time. So make sure you subscribe to this channel for updates when the next videos get posted. The Storm, a 120-year timeline, part 3. Some famous people who advocated for one world government. The one world dictatorship movement is not some crazy conspiracy theory, which is a strategic term invented by deep state propagandists for the purpose of closing down the minds of shallow, stupid people. The NWO has been confirmed by many powerful and famous people. Following are just a few of the telling quotes from well-known insiders. When the struggle seems to be drifting definitely towards a world social democracy, there may still be a great delays and disappointments before it becomes an efficient and beneficent world system. Countless people will hate the NWO and will die protesting against it. When we attempt to evaluate its promise, we have to bear in mind the distress of a generation or so of malcontents, many of them quite gallant and graceful-looking people. Noted author and British socialist H.G. Wells, The NWO, 1939. We have a picture of Albert Einstein. A federal organization of the nations of the world is not only possible, but an absolute necessity if the conditions on our planet are not to become unbearable for men. I am without any special attachment to any state or national entity whatsoever. A worldwide organization cannot ensure peace effectively unless it has control over the entire military power of its members. Albert Einstein. We must recreate the European family in a regional structure called, it may be, the United States of Europe. This indispensable structure of regional groupings is coming into being. In this way alone can the skeletal structure of world government be clothed with the flesh and blood of a living organism. Pop star John Lennon from famous song Imagine. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. nothing to kill or die for, and no religion to. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. We must strengthen the United Nations as a first step toward a world government with a legislature, executive and judiciary, and police to enforce its international laws and keep the peace. We Americans are going to have to yield up some of our sovereignty. That's going to be, to many, a bitter pill. Today, we must develop federal structures on a global level. We need a democratic federal world government. Walter Cronkite, upon receiving a World Government Award, 1999. Good evening, and congratulations, Walter, on receiving the World Federalists Association's Global Governance Award. The Storm, a 120-Year Timeline, Part 2. Introduction, Glossary of Terms. The NWO, we can't say that word, by the way. It is a generational global conspiracy among many of the elites of banking, media, politics, business, academia, and Hollywood to gradually tear down the United States of America and all sovereign nations and impose a communistic world government dictatorship in its place. The elites of this global mafia are also referred to as NWO or the Cabal, or globalists. The legendary Rothschild family has long been at the pinnacle of this movement, which has been behind all the wars, social turmoil, and economic hardships that have plagued humanity for the past 2 centuries. America Firsters, the generational resistors to globalism, and the NWO, also known as nationalists. Israel Firsters, a generational coalition of Jewish Zionists who seek to involve the U.S. in wars for Israeli expansion. They often clash with both the globalists and the America Firsters. They are also known as neoconservatives, neocons, black hats, lower-level bad guys in the worlds of intelligence, generally in the CIA, military, business, politics, and law enforcement who work for the NWO bosses, also known as the Deep State or the Swamp. White hats, patriotic good guys in the worlds of military, business, intelligence, generally in the NSA, politics, and law enforcement. Fake news, the mainstream media, which is wholly owned by the globalist cabal, also referred to as MSM, mainstream media, CBS, ABC, NBC, PBS, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, Time, Newsweek, etc. The Storm, the systematic takedown of the globalists described by Q, the mysterious internet poster linked to Donald Trump, aka the Great Awakening. The globalists use fake news to weaken America and all sovereign nations and peoples. The end goal is a global slave state. 1913, the Federal Reserve Bank and the income tax are born. The establishment of the privately owned Fed, a central bank, gave globalists a control mechanism with which they could print endless debt money and then charge the people interest on their own printed money. The nation's first income tax, the 16th Amendment, complemented the scheme by turning workers into human collateral that could be taxed at will by the political agents of the globalists. This cartoon warns of the coming money trust, correctly depicting as a monster octopus that would corrupt and control the nation. Woodrow Wilson delivered the goods to his globalist banker masters with the income tax and the central bank. And we see here the coming money trust, National Reserve Association, private syndicate, the Octopus Aldrich Plan. President's signature enacts currency law. Wilson declares it the first of series of constructive acts to aid business. Makes speech to group of Democratic leaders. Wilson sees dawn of a new era in business. Plans to make prosperity free to more unimpeded momentum. Conference report adopted in Senate by a vote of 43 to 25. Banks all over the country hasten to enter Federal Reserve System. Governor-elect Walsh calls passage of bill a fine Christmas present. Home views of Currency Act. 4 pens used by President. 1914 to 1918, the First World War for globalism and communism. The true purpose of World War I, UK, France, Italy, Russia versus Germany, Austria, Hungary, Turkey, was to smash up the empires of Europe and then consolidate their new political systems into the emerging New World Order. A secondary motive was to induce the British into stealing Palestine from the Ottoman Empire, Turkey, so that the foundation for the future nation of Israel could be established. Deep state puppet Wilson, under totally false pretenses, eventually dragged the United States into this war. And there's a picture of dead American doughboy trapped in the barbed wire. What did he really die for? And we have a newspaper article, the New York Herald, the Lusitania is sunk, 1,000 probably are lost. And then the Bisbee Daily Review, Wilson asks war. Congress expected to back up the president today. President calls on nation to bring German Empire to terms and end war. Asks Congress for 500,000 men for starrier and whole resources of U.S. The horror of World War I was engineered by the globalists, as was the May 1915 sinking of the Lusitania, which was being used to smuggle explosives to Britain from the U.S. Wilson pretended to keep us out of war, but as soon as his November 1916 re-election was won, he brought the U.S. into the war on the side of Britain and France, even as the Germans and Austro-Hungarians were pleading for peace. The war also had the disastrous and intended effect of pushing Imperial Christian Russia into communism. The Bolshevik revolutionaries, who were actually funded by the Western global bankers, went on to slaughter and imprison scores of millions of Russians in the greatest genocide the world had ever witnessed since the days of Genghis Khan. 1919 to 1920, the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations. The skeletal structure for the cabal's world government was to be the League of Nations, formed by the infamous Treaty of Versailles, which so devastated Germany, the nation was falsely blamed for causing the war. The idea for the League suffered a terrible blow when America Firsters in the U.S. Senate resisted Wilson's pressure and voted down membership in this world government trap. The League survived for 20 years, but without the mighty U.S. in it, it could never become what the globalists had envisioned. And we can see this newspaper here, treaty signed, war over. Wilson leaves Paris, sails Sunday. Germans pledge to act in good faith. League of Nations must rule, Wilson. That was the Butte Daily Post. The League of Nations was the globalists' first attempt at creating the skeletal structure for a world government. American nationalists in the Senate kept the U.S. out of it. Harding and the Roaring Twenties. After the war, Americans had tired of Wilsonian globalism, high taxes, and economic depression. The 1920s saw a string of Republican America Firster presidents, Warren Harding, Calvin Coolidge, and Herbert Hoover. But the globalists still had control of the Federal Reserve and much of the big newspapers. America Firster Harding healed the American economy by rolling back both Wilson's taxes and Wilson's spending by a whopping 50%. The result was an instantaneous and sustained recovery, which was finally killed by the Fed in 1929. And here's a picture of Warren Harding, and it says America First. Harding, who died mysteriously after just 18 months in office, was followed by Republicans Coolidge and Hoover. 1929, the stock market crash and Great Depression. By suddenly contracting the money supply after a period of rapid expansion of loans, the cabal was able to crash the economy in 1929. Their fake news then wrongly blamed the ensuing misery on President Herbert Hoover. As the suffering mounted, the cabal's controlled communist mobs began to destabilize America in advance of the next stage of the grand plan to install another Wilson-type puppet globalist in the White House. Brooklyn Daily Eagle. Wall Street in panic as stocks crash. Attempt made to kill Italy's crown prince. Stocks crash and rush to sell. Billions lost. Assassin caught in Brussels. Hollywood fire destroys films worth millions. Fear, 52 perished in Lake Michigan. Ferry is missing. Piece of plane. High duty group gave $700,000 to Coolidge Drive. Hoover's train halted by auto. Hoover's Poor Farm Tobacco Fund. Hard times are still hoovering over us. For geopolitical reasons, the 1929 crash and subsequent Great Depression were deliberately engineered by the globalist bankers. Fake news then blamed it all on President Hoover and the Republicans. Communist-led bonus army marches on Washington, stopped by military white hats. Just 3 months before the election of 1932, a communist-led mob of 43,000 people, including 17,000 veterans of World War I, marched on Washington to demand their World War I bonus money. Hoover brought in anti-communist General Douglas MacArthur to restore order. Assisting him was anti-communist Major George Patton, who commanded light tanks. Cavalry, infantry, and tear gas were used to break up the mobs and dismember their tents as the communists shouted, "Shame, shame." Serving as an assistant to MacArthur at this time was Major Dwight Eisenhower, an up-and-coming, well-connected black hat who disagreed with MacArthur's response to the Marxist mob. The fake news spun the event to make Hoover seem like a brutal dictator, which was the point of the stunt all along. Rank-and-file veterans marched to Washington to arrive at opening of Congress December 5th, 1932, to demand cash payment of bonus. And here's the newspaper article. Senate defeats bonus despite 10,000 veterans massed around Capitol. Vote on the bill is 62 to 18. City at high tension as hundreds camp in the plaza. What's wild is at the top it says 2 cents in New York City, 3 cents within 268 miles, 4 cents elsewhere except the something postal zones. The Senate said no to the communist-led mob. Anti-communist General Douglas MacArthur then tore down the tents and dispersed the mob by force. Fake news spun the event to make Hoover look bad. Then, as now, military patriots were a line of defense against cabal globalists and their communist street thugs. 1932. Franklin Delano Roosevelt installed as U.S. President. After 12 years without an agent in the White House to control, the cabal was back in business as globalist Democrat FDR was swept into office by a landslide, the result of the constant Hoover bashing coming from the fake news. FDR stacked his administration with hundreds of globalists and actual Communist Party members, wild spending, massive tax hikes, and tyrannical regulations followed, but the economy remained in a bad way throughout the 1930s. Roosevelt sweeps the nation. His electoral vote exceeds 500. Lehman wins. Charter adopted. Democrats retain state Senate lead. The fake news puffed up the globalist FDR into a savior. The Seattle Star Home Edition. Roosevelt promises national relief. Quick action to be put up to Congress. And raw, a man of courage, is at the helm. Great throngs hear address of executive. Thousands see nation's new president take oath. 1939 to 1945. World War II was started by and fought for globalism. The globalists, not Hitler, were the ones who badly wanted and needed another world war in order to crush the nationalist attitudes of the European states and Japan, lay the foundation for today's European Union, and bring the U.S. into a post-war United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and other global institutions. To that end, FDR encouraged the U.S.-influenced Chinese to make war with nationalist Japan and the U.S.-influenced Poles to make war with Germany. In 1941, After deliberately provoking Japan into attacking the U.S. Navy at Pearl Harbor, true story, FDR, like Wilson before him, was able to trick America into another world war for globalism. The monstrous lies taught to us about the history-altering event known as World War II are dispelled in The Bad War by M.S. King, a stunning work of writing and imagery that is still available at tomatobubble.com. The Bad War. The Truth Never Taught About World War II. M.S. King. Banned by Amazon. Thought crime scene. Hitler. I have made too many offers for the control and limitation of armaments, which posterity will not for all time be able to disregard for the responsibility for the outbreak of this war to be laid on me. I have further never wished that after the first fatal world war, a second against England or even against America should break out. Hirohito, Japanese Emperor. It has truly been unavoidable and far from our wishes that our empire has been brought to crossroads with America and Britain. Patiently have we waited and long have we endured in the hope that our government might retrieve the situation in peace. But our adversaries, showing not the least spirit of conciliation, have unduly delayed a settlement, and in the meantime, they have intensified the economic and political pressure to compel our empire to submission.
The Venona intercepts of the 1940s, unknown even to FDR at the time, the White Hats of United States Army Signal Intelligence Service, which was the forerunner of the NSA, National Security Agency, ran a counterintelligence program known as Venona Project. The purpose of the Venona Project was the interception and decoding of messages transmitted by the intelligence agencies of the Soviet Union. The program actually continued until the 1980s, and the intercepts were not declassified until 1995. When they were made public, it was revealed that certain highly placed individuals in the Roosevelt's administration were in fact communists and Soviet
collaborators. Unfortunately,
because information from the 1940s was not obtained through official legal channels, warrants, etc., it was neither actionable nor usable by the White Hats. As far back as the 1940s, the military forerunners of the NSA were already monitoring the subversive activities of globalists and communists, such as Alger Hiss of the State Department. But there was nothing that military intelligence could do with the evidence and information they had gathered. Hiss was later exposed and convicted of perjury, in part due to the actions of then-Congressman and future President Richard Nixon. 1950s, Senator Joseph McCarthy takes aim at communists and globalists. Portrayed by fake historians and fake news as a vile slanderer of innocent people, Senator Joseph McCarthy was, in reality, an America Firster patriot whose much-publicized Senate hearings were conducted in a very thorough, fair, and logical manner. McCarthy and his allies in both political parties, which included patriotic Democrats John and Robert Kennedy, knew that communist and globalist traitors were plotting the downfall of America. For that reason, President Eisenhower and his CIA black hats had him stripped of his influence and later poisoned him at Bethesda Naval Hospital in 1957, we believe, the same hospital where former Defense Secretary and mentor to McCarthy, James Forrestal, was murdered in 1 decade earlier. Anyone who believes the nonsense about McCarthy being evil or going too far ought to read St. Joseph of Wisconsin by M.S. King. How can we account for our present situation unless we believe that men high in this government are concerting to deliver us to disaster? This must be the product of a great conspiracy, a conspiracy on a scale so immense as to dwarf any previous such venture in the history of man. A conspiracy of infamy so black that, when it is finally exposed, its principles shall be forever deserving of the maledictions of all honest men. Here is a picture of the book titled St. Joseph of Wisconsin, the historic true story of Senator Joseph McCarthy, the fake news, and fake historians don't want you to know by M.S. King. Here are 2 photos of McCarthy with his legal aide, Roy Cohn, and Donald Trump with his lawyer and mentor in the 1970s, the same Roy Cohn. 1953 to 1960. The Eisenhower presidency aggressively promotes globalism. Though he was a Republican, elected to clean up Washington, General Eisenhower was a globalist black hat all the way. Not only did he work from behind the scenes to ceaselessly undermine and destroy the once popular Joe McCarthy, he also helped to establish the very first Bilderberg secret meetings in Europe, where big-shot globalists meet each year to plot their next move. Eisenhower's brother, close confidant and university president Milton Eisenhower, openly admitted to wanting an all-powerful world government. It's worth noting that Eisenhower hated Patriots General Patton, who was killed in a strange car accident in 1945, and General MacArthur. Read all about it in I Don't Like Ike by M.S. King. I Don't Like Ike, the story of globalist socialist Dwight Eisenhower that Stephen Ambrose didn't tell you, by M.S. King, a project of TomatoBubble.com. Bilderberg File, The West's Secret Power Group 1, I Don't Like Ike, by M.S. King 2. As a candidate, Eisenhower pretended to support McCarthy's investigations, McCarthy and Eisenhower shaking hands. But as president, Ike worked from behind the scenes to take away McCarthy's influence in 1954 and apparently had him poisoned and killed in 1957. 3. Globalist Eisenhower helped launch the annual secret Bilderberg meetings, which continue to this day. While serving at varying times as president of 3 different universities, Milton Eisenhower, Dwight's brother and political mentor, openly promoted world government as well as UNESCO's communist brainwashing. 2. Marxist Milty played an important role in the early indoctrination of college students with UNESCO garbage. 3. Milton was puffed up on Time magazine cover. 1961. The true meaning of Eisenhower's military-industrial complex warning. Globalist Eisenhower's televised farewell address to the nation is remembered for his warning about the military-industrial complex. Here's the famous line. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. January 17, 1961. Crooked Eisenhower's televised warning about the military has been misunderstood. Eisenhower's farewell sees threat to liberties in vast defense machine. Vigilance urged talk bids Godspeed to Kennedy voices. More than 40 years after having installed Woodrow Wilson as president, Bernard Baruch meets with his puppets Eisenhower and Churchill in the White House. What few understood both then and now is that Eisenhower's concern about MIC was that the white hats in business and the military, like Trump and NSA, might one day team up to defeat the globalists. You see, if and when America was to ever fall to a globalist tyranny, and we were almost there in 2016, the only force that could possibly mobilize and save the day at the 11th hour would be the combined power of the business and military intelligence communities, like Trump and NSA. If anti-globalist businessmen patriots the likes of Henry Ford, Benjamin Friedman, and Robert Welch had ever conspired for freedom with anti-globalist military patriots such as George Patton and Douglas MacArthur, it would have been all over for the New World Order, and right quick too. And that, dear reader, was the threat that the globalist Eisenhower brothers were really concerned about, a threat which has since been expanded to include armed local police and lawful gun owners. Globalist Malcolm Moose and globalist Milton Eisenhower actually wrote the famous speech. They worried that a military-industrial complex, white hats, might one day rise to free America from the clutches of globalism. Dim-witted Ike read the script which they penned. 1963, The Deep State Murders. John F. Kennedy. JFK, whose father, ambassador to Britain. Joseph Kennedy, hated the globalists and had tried to prevent World War II, was never trusted by the NWO cabal. During his 2.5 presidency, JFK defied the NWO gangsters by resisting the drive to war in Vietnam and also by confronting the Federal Reserve Bank and the Israeli Prime Minister. On November 22, 1963, the popular and charismatic young president was shot in his open limousine on live TV. A few days later, Lee Harvey Oswald, the innocent patsy assassin who had been set up to take the blame, was himself shot dead on live TV by Jack Ruby, who himself mysteriously died in prison just 4 years later. Lyndon Baines Johnson, an evil tyrant who hated Kennedy, then became president. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are as a people inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. John F. Kennedy. JFK warned about secret societies. It cost him his life. Chicago Tribune assassin kills Kennedy. Lyndon Johnson sworn in. Governor of Texas wounded. Marxist accused of murder. The Milwaukee Journal. Extra. Oswald slain. Shot on way to new jail. Killer held. The deep state killed JFK in broad daylight, and then they killed Oswald, the patsy assassin, too. 1968. Deep State Black Hats murder Robert F. Kennedy. After winning the California state primary election for Democrats, Robert F. Kennedy, brother of JFK, appeared certain to win the nomination and probably the presidency. The Black Hats could not allow such a thing, for surely once in power, RFK, who had worked for Joseph McCarthy's committee and chose McCarthy to be godfather to his daughter, would have gone after JFK's real killers. On June 5th, he too was gunned down. The murder was blamed on a Palestinian named Sirhan Sirhan. In 2017, one of RFK's sons publicly stated that he believed Sirhan to be innocent and that the CIA was involved. Though belonging to different parties, RFK and Joe McCarthy were close. The Kennedys and McCarthy were all murdered by the same conspiracy. The Evening Star. Robert F. Kennedy dies. RFK had to also be killed before he could become president and go after his brother's killers. In 2017, RFK Jr. publicly stated that he believed that the CIA was involved in the killing of his father. 1970. Deep state-connected communist terrorists plot to murder Army officers at Fort Dix. A townhouse exploded in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of Manhattan. It was caused by the premature detonation of a massive nail bomb that was being assembled by members of the Communist Weather Underground, an American radical leftist group headed by Bill Ayers. When the bomb accidentally exploded, the blast reduced the 4-story townhouse to a burning ruin. The two communists preparing the bomb, Diana Oughton and Terry Robbins, were killed instantly. Oughton was the girlfriend of Bill Ayers. The bomb had been intended to blow up Army officers and their dates at an upcoming dinner dance at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Ayers later became a fugitive on the FBI's most wanted list. Due to his deep state protection, charges against Ayers were dropped in 1973 due to legal technicalities. Years later, Ayers and his fellow communist terrorist wife, Bernadine Doyen, would, in their living room, help to launch the political career of CIA creation, Barack Obama. The white hats of the military were well aware of this, yet still powerless to stop the treason infesting America. I'm Barack Hussein Obama Jr., and these two killers are my friends. Ayers and friends tried to murder Army officers. Years later, they tried the legal route to taking over America by launching the career of Barack Obama. 1974. Cabal CIA removes Richard Nixon from office. After his landslide re-election in 1972, the cabal sought to Republican Richard Nixon from office. Nixon was a clever and pragmatic politician who was never liked or trusted by the establishment. Much of the mistrust dates back to his days as a young California congressman who worked to expose communists within the U.S. government. With the deep state Washington Post breathlessly taking the lead, Nixon was crucified for trying to cover up to a minor political burglary, which he did not know about, that occurred at the Watergate Hotel. After being impeached by Congress, he resigned and globalist operative Gerald Ford became president. I think Hiss is lying. Hiss guilty on felony counts. Daily 5 News, Nixon Wits. President Nixon announced his resignation tonight in a TV address to the nation. Vice President Gerald Ford will become 38th president tomorrow. The cabal never forgot how Congressman Nixon helped expose the globalist communist traitor Alger Hiss in the late 1940s. After winning a second term in a landslide, it was feared that Nixon would become uncontrollable. 2 CIA journalists, Woodward and Bernstein of the fake news Washington Post, served as the tip of the spear which took down Nixon with anonymous sources and ushered in a wave of Democrat congressmen in 1974 and 1976. In 2017 and 2018, the aging legends Woodward and Bernstein were reactivated to take down President Trump over a fake scandal. But the magic is gone. They, and many others, failed this time. 1981. Black hats almost kill President Reagan. In the 1980 election, Ronald Reagan was swept into office with a landslide victory over globalist incumbent Jimmy Carter. Reagan, though he ran as a nationalist conservative, was forced by the globalist wing of the Republican Party to pick former CIA Director George Bush as his vice president. Less than 2 months into his presidency, Reagan was shot by the deranged John Hinckley, whose family had known business connections to the Bush family. After surviving what is said to have been a ricocheted bullet, some argue that it was a sharp flying object fired from someone else, Reagan was to have been finished off at Bethesda Naval Hospital in Washington, D.C., where influential anti-globalist patriots James Forrestal, 1949, and Joe McCarthy, 1957, had both been murdered. But Reagan's attendants would not allow him to be brought to Bethesda. Probably out of fear, Reagan was never his hardcore anti-globalist conservative self again. The numerous globalist and neocon operatives around him kept him under control for 8 years, until George H.W. Bush could win the presidency in 1988. Reagan wounded. Santa Cruz Sentinel. Reagan was nearly killed, and former CIA Director George Bush nearly became president. After the scary event, the conservative nationalist Reagan became more moderate. 1980s and 1990s. The Internet grows out of a military project to rival the fake news. The Internet grew out of the ARPANET, a project of the U.S. military. When the technology became public, few realized that the world-changing instant communications power of the Internet would one day allow truth-tellers to bypass the almighty fake news and actually challenge the power of the globalists. Could it be that was plan of the white hats of the military-industrial complex all along? The picture of J. Rockefeller reads, "The Internet should have never existed. It's a threat to national security." Translated, "It's screwing up the monopoly family has had on America for the last 140 years, and people are finding out what scumbags we are. We have the U.S. military to thank for the Internet and the possible downfall of the globalists." 3. Super globalist Senator J. Rockefeller on Internet security. It really almost makes you ask the question, would it have been better if we had never invented the Internet? January 1989. January 2017. A 28-year horror show. Bush 1, Clinton, Bush 2, Obama. The 28-year period after Reagan marked a relentless advance toward big government at home and world government abroad as 4 of the most deceitful presidents in American history, each built upon the ruinous policies of his predecessors. Under Bush 1, big government got much bigger at home, illegal immigration from the Third World continued unchecked, and the U.S. waged the first fraudulent war on Iraq. Under Clinton, big government got much bigger at home, illegal immigration from the Third World continued unchecked, the U.S. attacked Iraq and Yugoslavia, and also raped post-Soviet Russia. Under Bush 2, big government got much bigger at home, illegal immigration from the Third World continued unchecked, and the Black Hats staged the horrible false flag attacks of September 11th, which were then used as a false pretext to go to war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Under Obama, big government got much bigger at home, illegal immigration from the Third World continued unchecked, and new proxy wars, with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, using the CIA's front group ISIS, were waged against Syria and Libya. After 28 straight years under the most evil and corrupt deep state globalist presidents imaginable, and with Hillary Clinton being pumped up as next in line, all hope seemed lost for America and much of the world. 1999, Black Hats murdered JFK Jr. to block him from starting a political career. JFK was expected by many to run for a seat in the U.S. Senate from New York in 2000. The handsome celebrity would surely have won and then positioned himself for a future White House run. The Black Hats behind then First Lady Hillary Clinton were never going to allow the man whose father and uncle they had murdered during the 1960s, and another unkilled, Joe Jr., died during World War II when his plane mysteriously exploded, to start a political career. JFK Jr.'s airplane was sabotaged in July 1999, killing him and his wife, Carolyn. The crash was blamed on pilot error. Hillary then won the Senate seat from New York. 26 Pod Special Wraps, Rame News, Daily Dues lost JFK Jr., wife presumed dead in plane crash off Vineyard. 1. The murder of JFK Jr. cleared the path for Hillary Clinton while blocking another Kennedy from gaining the power needed to expose the 1963 assassination of JFK Sr. 2. Little John salutes his father's casket. Trump and JFK Jr. were friends. 2001, Black Hats staged the false flag terror attacks of September 11, 2001. Black Hats staged the horrible false flag attacks of September 11th, which were then blamed on a powerless bogeyman named Osama bin Laden and used as a false pretext to go to perpetual war in Afghanistan and Iraq. This was critical to keep the Asian landmass under globalist control. The buildings in New York were rigged with explosives from top to bottom, a fact which is clearly evident when reviewing the films, and has also been established by subsequent forensic evidence covered up by the cabal's fake news. Foreign intelligence services, UK and Israel, also participated in this monstrous event. The New York Times, US attacked, hijacked jets, destroyed Twin Towers, and hit Pentagon in Day of Terror, a creeping horror. President vows to exact punishment for evil. Bin Laden denied 9/11. I have already said that I am not involved in the September 11th attacks in the United States. As a Muslim, I try my best to avoid telling a lie. I had no knowledge of these attacks, nor do I consider the killing of innocent women, children, and other humans as an appreciable act. Trump knows. I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through the wall. Donald Trump, September 11th, 2001. 2000s. Vladimir Putin saves Russia from the globalist conspiracy. As soon as the Soviet Union, USSR, had disintegrated in 1991, globalist agents began the rape and plunder of Russia and the other ex-republics of the USSR. The deliberately engineered economic and social collapse of 1990s Russia were horrible for the Russian people. By the time its inept American-controlled drunken president, Boris Yeltsin, left office after 1999, he had a 2% approval rating. The new president, Vladimir Putin, was a Russian patriot. Slowly but surely, and sometimes secretively, Putin began the process of liberating his country from the globalists and restoring the Russian economy and spirit. One by one, the oligarch traitors were arrested or forced to flee to the US, UK, or Israel. That is why Putin is so hated by the fake news of the Western globalists. Read The War Against Putin by M.S. King. Yanks to the rescue. The secret story of TN American advisors helped Yeltsin win. The war against Putin, what the government media complex isn't telling you about Russia. M.S. King. It's better to be hanged for loyalty than be rewarded for betrayal. Vladimir Putin AZ quotes Time magazine once boasted about how the United States, under globalists, controlled Yeltsin's Russia. 2. The war against Putin describes how the globalists ruined Russia and hate Putin for saving it. 2009. ClimateGate. NSA white hats hack the emails of fake scientists manipulating temperature readings in support of the global warming hoax. The true agenda of the global warming climate change hoax is to provide a phony pretext for the globalists to impose worldwide taxes on carbon, erase national sovereignty, and seize control over more and more private enterprise. In advance of a major climate conference in Copenhagen, Denmark, NSA, White Hats, hacked into the emails of some of the world's top climate hoaxsters. It was revealed that these UN-funded fakes were plotting among themselves as to how to rig temperatures upward. Though most suspected that an insider working with these scientists blew the whistle, it is far more likely that the hackers were NSA White Hats. It wouldn't be the last time that mysterious hackers did damage to the cabal. Keep that in mind. Christopher Booker. This is the worst scientific scandal of our generation. The true objective of the global warming/climate change hoax is to suppress living standards and drive us into world government. NSA White Hat hackers were aware of the fraud. 2009 to 2013. Obama purges 197 military officers in 5 years. Investors Business Daily, October 29, 2013. What the president calls my military is being cleansed of any officer suspected of disloyalty to or disagreement with the administration on matters of policy or force structure, leaving the compliant and fearful. Another senior retired general told the Blaze on the condition of anonymity because he still provides services to the government and fears possible retribution, that they're using the opportunity of the shrinkage of the military to get rid of people that don't agree with them or do not toe the party line. Civilian National Security Force. We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded. Barack Obama. Obama, in 2008, openly called for a civilian national security force, headed by him, that would be as powerful as the U.S. military, which he sought to neuter. NSA was hacker, whistleblower, fugitive 2013. CIA Black Hats infiltrate the NSA with Edward Snowden. With much hype from the fake news, the legendary Edward Snowden exposed for all the world that the NSA gathering up all forms of electronic communication and storing it. Though portrayed as a heroic freedom fighter, Snowden was actually a CIA Black Hat inserted into the NSA to damage its reputation and trigger an effort to weaken or destroy the NSA, or even to have its capabilities transferred over to the CIA. Remember, the cabal has always feared the white hats of military intelligence. Think back to their hatred for MacArthur and Patton, the Venona intercepts, and globalist Eisenhower's whining about the military-industrial complex. The NSA survived the CIA Snowden operation, but did suffer an image problem because of it. NSA, the white hats of the NSA, are in possession of all electronic evidence, texts, emails, phone records, credit card transactions, social media, posts, etc., of every crime committed by the deep state globalists. The CIA agent and traitor Ed Snowden was placed into NSA to destroy the agency and bring its capabilities under the control of CIA Black Hats. 2015. The phony Paris Climate Accord set the stage for worldwide tyranny with the U.S. under Obama fully on board. The media-hyped Paris Climate Agreement represented a huge victory for the cabal globalists. The scam set the stage for the deliberate grinding down of worldwide living standards, brutal global taxation on energy, and eventual global governance from which there would be no escape. With globalist witch Hillary Clinton expected to become the U.S. president after Obama, it seemed impossible to stop the cabal. GRREN is the NEWRED, AGENDA 21. Brown and Cameron outline rival green visions. New World Order to save Earth for the planet. Save the planet is a globalist trick to dupe people into accepting world government. 2015-16. Military intelligence recruits. Donald Trump runs for the Republican nomination for U.S. President. Few gave Donald Trump any chance of winning the Republican nomination, let alone the presidency. But his nationalist rhetoric of Make America Great Again and hard-hitting attacks took down on establishment globalist Republican rivals, took them out one by one. And yet, No one expected him to defeat the globalists' golden girl, the evil Hillary Clinton, except for the powers of military intelligence which were backing him and protecting him all along. Military white hats, rather than shocking the public with a violent coup against the globalists, chose Trump so that they could crush the cabal legally. L.R. Donald Trump, Nikola Tesla, John Trump. John Trump, Donald's uncle, was a brilliant scientist who called upon by U.S. military intelligence to review the papers of the recently departed electrical genius Nikola Tesla in 1943. This provides us with yet another link between the Trump family and the military white hats, who have been working against the globalists for decades. George. The secret behind Trump's political fling. JFK Jr.'s magazine George promoted the idea of Trump running for president back in 1999. NSA white hats hack Hillary's emails and release damaging information through WikiLeaks. Continuously, throughout the campaign of 2016, in spite of the fake news attempting to protect her, Hillary Clinton was time and again hurt and embarrassed by email leaks that were made public. The Demon Rats would later on claim that it was Russian hackers who hacked Hillary and the Democrat National Committee. In reality, the hackers were the same ones behind the ClimateGate hacks of 2009 and the Venona intercepts of decades gone by. The military intelligence white hats, Hillary, Admiral Mike Rogers, NSA Director, Cyber Command Director, Isageto days ago MAGL, General Mike Flynn. 1. NSA hacked and leaked some of Hillary's emails. 2. Admiral Mike Rogers is the director of the NSA, and he is a nationalist white hat. 3. General Mike Flynn, another white hat of military intelligence. October 2016. In debate, Trump threatens to appoint a special counsel to investigate criminal allegations against Hillary. Headline, Washington Post, October 2016. Trump. If elected, I'll appoint a special prosecutor to look into Clinton's emails. Donald Trump said during Sunday's presidential debate that if elected, he would appoint a special prosecutor to look into Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server while she was Secretary of State. I didn't think I'd say this, and I'm going to say it, and I hate to say it. If I win, I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation because there has never been so many lies, so much deception, Trump said. You'll be in jail. Garrison crooked Hillary. Trump will ditch the witch. Trump is a man of his word, but how would he ever be able to put Hillary and so many others in jail without it appearing to be politically motivated? November 2016. Trump wins. With NSA white hats protecting against rigged computer voting, and with white hat FBI Director James Comey hurting Clinton, while pretending to clear her of crimes, Trump pulled off the impossible and was elected 45th President of the United States. Hillary is said to have had a psychotic and violent episode that night. The New York Times, Trump triumphs outsider mogul captures the presidency, stunning Clinton in battleground states BBC trending. The Trump miracle shocked the world and caused Hillary to break down into bouts of drinking and sleepless nights. Trump strangely, and to the bafflement of many, closes every single one of his rallies and even his acceptance speech at the GOP nominating convention with a song from the Rolling Stones. The lyrics are directed at the murderous, deceiving Hillary Clinton, from You Can't Always Get What You Want. I saw her today at the reception. In her glass was a bleeding man. She was practiced at the art of deception. Well, I could tell by her blood-stained hands. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. January 2017, Inauguration Ceremony. Trump's military sends a message to the globalists and to the American people from the Daily Mail, UK. Headline, Did soldiers accidentally crash Trump's inaugural speech? Bizarre moment. Servicemen in uniform flank the new president and walk away after a few seconds. A group of soldiers appeared to crash Donald Trump's inauguration on Friday in a bizarre moment that unfolded in the background of his first speech as president. The president had just begun his address when several members of the armed forces in uniform walked up behind him and stood there stoically. Viewers could have gotten the impression that all was going as planned, if not for the appearance of an extra man in uniform. That man seemed to tell the soldiers something, prompting them to leave before the end of the speech. Trump didn't seem to notice anything out of the ordinary and carried on with his address. Neither the timing nor the sudden appearance and disappearance of the military group was by chance. The strange event started at the exact moment that Trump said this before the national audience. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the American people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. And then the soldiers/sailors vanished as quickly as they had appeared. The message was this: the military, with Trump as its commander-in-chief, is quietly transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the American people, and then quietly leaving the scene. A Sicilian message from the inauguration of Donald Trump, 45th president. The White Hats of the military-industrial complex were making a statement about transferring power. 2017. Trump's inner circle led by military men. Trump's closet and most powerful cabinet members and advisors come from the military. Trump's generals include General John Kelly, Homeland Security, then Chief of Staff, General James Mattis, Defense Secretary, General Mike Flynn, former National Security Advisor, Mike Pompeo, CIA Director, then Secretary of State, was also a West Point graduate, graduated first in his class. Admiral Mike Rogers, the director of the NSA, is also close to Trump, and Special Counsel Robert Mueller is a decorated ex-Marine captain who was wounded in Vietnam. General Kelly, General Mattis, Trump with General Flynn, Captain Pompeo. This represents the calm before the storm. Trump loves to show off his generals and admirals. We are witnessing a legal coup, a military conspiracy to save the world from the evil cabal. 2017. Cabal agents in both parties and fake news launch. Blistering attack on the new president. Just days into his presidency, a massive coup attempt was launched against Trump. It got so bad that for a while it really seemed that Trump would fail. Relentless attacks from the fake news, Hollywood stars and the Democrats, combined with the deliberate sabotage being carried out by Republican black hats like John McCain, Paul Ryan, Jeff Flake, Lindsey Graham, and others, had a demoralizing effect on Trump supporters. TY tickets. 7. Call the President SFNES. An investigation of Trump for Russian collusion was launched with ex-FBI Chief Robert Mueller named as special prosecutor. Night after night, the CIA's late-night comedians mocked and ridiculed the new president as Trump's approval rating plummeted to as low as 35% in some polls. Daily News. Racist. Trump blaze. Legend call Trump a bigot. Donald Duck's protester at rally. Call the president's friends. Fake news. Globalist Democrats and globalist Republicans. Deep staters, European governments, domestics, communists, and rent-a mobs of every stripe, paid mainly by George Soros and Tom Steyer, launched a coup attempt designed to destabilize Trump and force his resignation. 2017. Trump defies the globalists. Overcoming the fierce opposition of the Democrats, some globalist Republicans, the media, and the international community, Trump pulled America out of the sovereignty-destroying TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the Paris Climate Accords. He also collaborated with Russia to defund and destroy the CIA's ISIS terror group and finally bring peace to Syria. And he began the process of making peace with North Korea and Russia, initiatives for which he has been viciously attacked by the fake news. Trump digs coal, restoring coal jobs and deactivating dangerous hotspots which the globalists could use to start a war at any time, were major accomplishments. And then came QAnon. QAnon is a conspiracy theory which began with an October 2017 post on the anonymous internet forum 4chan, appearing on a subforum titled The Storm, made by someone using the handle Q. The poster, who later moved to 8chan, claims to represent military intelligence, with access to highly classified information involving the Trump administration and its enemies in the international cabal. The numerous posts, known as crumbs, predict in surprisingly accurate detail how the White Hats, fed up with seeing a government of and owned by traitors, are going to gradually dismantle a satanic conspiracy of the deep state/black hats. The crumbs accuse numerous liberal Hollywood actors, politicians, and high-ranking officials of engaging in an international child sex trafficking, child torture, and child murder ring. According to the theory, Trump arranged for Robert Mueller to be appointed not to investigate Trump and the Russians, but rather to investigate Hillary and the cabal. That is why Trump constantly refers to the Mueller probe as a witch hunt. The witch is Hillary, and she is indeed being hunted. The conspiracy theory is also known as the storm, after Trump's cryptic reference to a coming storm, and the Great Awakening. You guys know what this represents? Inaudible. Maybe it's the calm before the storm. A C-360 special report, Trump made it a point to surround himself with military leaders and tease the media with talk about a coming storm. Soon afterwards, QAnon began his amazingly prophetic posts. Q's cryptic posts are numerous and require hours of study, research, and deductive logic to make sense of. Consider the accurate bullet point summary set forth below as a good crash course of what Q has posted. For a more thorough analysis, research and work through the many Q posts on your own at various sites which repost them online, like Gannon.pub. The Cabal never expected Hillary to lose. The Cabal was not aware of what the White Hats had in store for them. The storm is actually a military coup which recruited Trump to lead the political and legal aspects of what is to be the greatest sting operation. Robert Mueller, an ex-Marine, actually works for the White Hats while pretending to oppose Trump. The NSA has all the evidence needed to take down the Cabal. JFK Sr. and JFK Jr. were murdered by the Cabal. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia was murdered by the Cabal. The evidence needs to be cleaned, that is, slowly introduced under the cover of other investigations, so that it is no longer unactionable evidence. The coup is a slow-motion process, not an overnight event. Many federal judges need to be appointed and FBI and DOJ criminals slowly purged and replaced with patriots. It is important not to shock the public all at once. When the time is right, mass arrests of traitors will be made, and a national emergency will be declared. Plants, such as General Mike Flynn and former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort, were placed fake investigation so that some of the NSA evidence could be laundered and placed into play. Attorney General pretended to be weak and incompetent. This under Jeff Sessions only allowed him to clean out traitors in the FBI and DOJ and conduct his own investigations into Democrat voter fraud, the Clinton Foundation, child sex trafficking, and other crimes in peace and quiet. Hillary and daughter Chelsea are into Satanism and witchcraft. Obama's Iran deal was crooked and involved massive cash bribes. Hillary Clinton and many other big names are involved with child sex trafficking, child sex torture murder, and Satanism. Obama is a child sex predator. The secret war between the factions extends to outer space. The resignations and firings of so many big men, many of them child rapists in media, Hollywood, business, and politics, is by design of the White Hats. Smaller criminals are being used to rat out the bigger ones. The Black Hats have conspired with certain foreign allies to assassinate Trump. Several attempts have been thwarted. John McCain faked cancer in a failed attempt to escape justice. He was later executed by the military for high treason so that he could not be there to stop Trump's Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh from being nominated. Hey, John. What's wrong with this picture? Your orthopedic boot is on the wrong foot, you dummy. Bustetti, Hillary, and McCain were both spotted wearing ankle boots for past 2 months, he for a tendon injury, and she for a broken toe sustained while falling down the stairs backwards while drinking coffee. Were they concealing GPS ankle devices? Your cane is on the wrong side, Senator. McCain was later caught switching his boot from right to left and explained it away by saying his other leg was getting tired. John McCain O. at Senlone McCain. Thank you for your support and best wishes. My left leg was doing extra work to compensate for the boot, so I'm giving it a break. I still hate wearing this boot, but it won't slow us down from frying 7 turkeys today. Follow. Trump has spent nearly 2 years stacking the federal judiciary with patriots in advance of trials. The official stories of World War I and II are false. Tech frontmen such as Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk are CIA. Ed Snowden was hunted by NSA, but is now cooperating with the White Hats. The state government of California has started wildfires in order to get more federal money. Other black hat Republicans were forced to resign: Jeff Flake, Paul Ryan, Bob Corker, etc. Over 50,000 sealed indictments, many of them big names, will eventually be unsealed. Cabal criminals will be tried by military tribunals, be sent to the U.S.'s Guantanamo prison in Cuba. The elite, D.C.-based Pizzagate child sex and torture murder ring is real and will be exposed. Guantanamo Bay military prison will be filled up with cabal members and their agents. The mighty Rothschilds and George Soros will fall. During the storm, Trump will use emergency cell phone alerts to bypass the media and communicate directly to the American people. The Democrat Party is being set up for Trump to destroy it. Blacks will abandon the Democrat Party when they learn of Hillary's kidnapping and sex trafficking of Haitian children. Other world leaders, Putin, Xi, are working with Trump to smash the globalist once and for all. The Republicans would be purged of anti-Trump traitors and then roll onto a very successful 2018 midterm elections. The truth about the 9/11 attacks will be revealed in due time. The Israel-Palestine issue will be settled peacefully once and for all. There will be no more Israeli aggression or expansion, and there's much, much more. All of Q's posts can be seen at qanon.pub. Adding credence to the QAnon phenomenon are the vicious mainstream media attacks aimed at Q, as well as the indisputable fact that Trump himself, on many occasions, both by tweets and in person, has deliberately provided Q followers with clear hints that he knows about Q. Is Q anon for real? Well, it is looking more and more as if Trump is blessed and backed up by some invisible force that is very powerful, is it not? The coming months will tell. In the meantime, keep this presentation in mind and spread it widely. The Pedo Monster Art of Alex Podesta. Many people now know about the suspected pedo monster Podesta brothers John and Tony. John was Hillary's campaign manager, and Tony, current whereabouts unknown, probably under arrest, was one of the most influential lobbyists in D.C. until Robert Mueller, who was working with Trump, put him out of business in late 2017. Here are a few pieces of crap produced by artists that Tony Podesta, by his own admission, ranked among his favorites. Torture and murder of children. Evidently, that's what Alice in Wonderland, Hillary's codename according to emails hacked by NSA, means to pedo monsters. Would you display such photos in your home? Or throw a party for the artist? Podesta did. Mr. Graham, Mr. Hatch, Trump's top 3 globalist Republican enemies in the Senate, Flake, McCain, and Corker, are gone, and the 4th, Graham, is now his barking pet dog. Coincidence? No way. We are QAnon 1 and 2. QAnon followers are growing in number so fast that the fake news has launched many attacks on the movement. 3. Late-night talk show host Bill Maher, called out as a pedo monster by QAnon, did a lengthy segment mocking the conspiracy theory. General Mike Flynn. We have an army of digital soldiers. We have what we call citizen journalists because the journalists that we have in our media did a disservice to themselves, actually, more than they did to this country. Because they displayed an arrogance that is unprecedented. And so the American people decided to take over the idea of information. They took over the idea of information, and they did it through social media. This is irregular warfare at its finest. The end. For now. QAnon. The storm. A generational global conspiracy among the internationalist elites of banking, media, politics, business, academia, and Hollywood to gradually tear down the United States of America and all sovereign nations and impose a communistic world government dictatorship in its place has existed for many generations. The elites of this worldwide mafia are also referred to as globalists. They have been behind all the wars, social turmoil, and economic hardships that have plagued humanity for the past 2 centuries. Their conspiratorial master plan had seemed unstoppable until the white hats behind the QAnon movement took them by surprise.